Ramborough back with some Grand Tactician Civil War CSA campaign in the 1.06 version of the game. Okay, so like I just said, we're in this Confederate campaign and we're in the winter, but we're into February now, so the winter will soon be coming to a close. It has been a fairly active winter. It used to be in previous versions of the game that sometimes, not always, sometimes things would kind of quiet down on both sides during winter quarters, and that was kind of a time when you could, recruit more troops, do some training. Union has been fairly active, at least in some theaters, through the winter, and that is probably going to continue. Okay. But I've done a little bit of stuff off camera since the end of the last episode, primarily to do with Bragg's recruiting command. He had quite a few troops that had been recruited, new units, and I sent them down here to besiege and capture Fort Pickens. And that, I did that for a couple reasons. One of them was a bunch of people wanted me to. That was a factor. I'm not going to lie. But another good effect of that is that those troops then lost their first combat debuff. Got that out of the way so that they don't have that dragging down their morale the first time they enter tactical combat, meaning on the tactical map, because that was, auto-resolve stuff. And then I've moved him back up to his spot in Atlanta, which is kind of equidistant between the two theaters. And so all the units he had under his command, I have now farmed out to the armies. Magruder got a couple of units. Sidney Johnston up here in Kentucky got a few units. And Sterling Price in Missouri got a few units. So let's just kind of go through where we're at with each of the 5 main armies. Right. So I didn't do too much with Beauregard and Joe Johnston because, they haven't been fighting for a while, and they've had a chance to kind of build up their forces. So they're both over 20,000 men. I did give them an extra artillery battalion apiece, so now they've got an artillery division of 3 battalions, and then each infantry division also has an attached battalion. And right now they're all still mostly smoothbores. But the eventual idea, once we get our 3-inch ordnance and 6-pound wired rifles into the armory, which is still going to be several months, the idea is that the artillery division will be rifled artillery, and they'll sit a little bit further back. And these are the guys who are going to do things like bombardment and counter battery. And then each division, but will also continue to have smoothbores. The vast majority of them will be 24-pound howitzers attached to each of the infantry divisions. Now, for each individual battle, they might be detached, and I might place them right with the artillery division. Who knows? But an artillery division, and then some more smoothbores to be used as the situation dictates for any given battle. Okay, so that's this is Beauregard's army, which will eventually be the First Corps of the Army of Northern Virginia. Once we unlock the organization reform, that will be a little bit in the future. And then same for Johnston's Shenandoah army, which will eventually be the Second Corps in the Army of Northern Virginia. And I'm going to skip past Missouri Army for a second. And then the Peninsula Army, currently under Magruder, which will eventually be the Third Corps in the Army of Northern Virginia. He was a little bit lower, and so I've sent an infantry brigade to Magruder, and this force, I think I'm just going to combine it right into either Tolliver's or Mahone's brigades. For these three armies, I'm going to keep the kind of 7 infantry brigade structure because these three armies are kind of staying right in the same area and will be working together. So each individual corps can be a little bit smaller at 7 infantry brigades, and at full strength, they'll probably be about 25,000 men most of the time. So, essentially, they're acting as a 75,000, or will eventually be more of like a 75,000 men army. Especially once we get, they will officially be that once we get the organization reform going. The Missouri and Tennessee armies, however, they are, I don't have multiple corps in those theaters yet, or multiple armies working together like we have in Virginia. And so I'm buffing them up a little bit to a 9 infantry brigade size. And so here we go. Sterling Price has got, he's been kind of taking it on the chin a little bit. He's been winning most of his battles, but this army's been getting a little ground down, and he's got a lot of help on the way now. There are 3 infantry brigades coming, which I'm going to combine into his existing brigades, and then he's got 2 more brigades coming under Hayes and Stevenson, who are actually going to increase his number of infantry brigades. And so he's eventually going to have, when all that shakes out and they arrive, he's going to have 9 infantry brigades in this army, and also that same, 3 battalion in an artillery division, and then more attached smoothbores to each infantry division. And I think all these guys are pretty close. Hayes, 5 days out. Stevenson, 5 days. Maury, Frost, Hardy, 4 days apiece. So they're going to be here pretty quick. And once they arrive, he'll be over 20,000 men. It'll hover, with attrition and stuff, it'll hover right around 20,000 for a little while. But when this fully fleshes out, you potentially could be as many as 30,000 men. It'll take a while for these brigades to build up to that point, and I'm sure they're going to continue fighting. But Price should be much better able to deal with these armies in Missouri now. And then I did something similar with Johnston's Tennessee army, which hasn't done a lot of fighting yet, but I think it's about to. I think it's going to pick up for Sidney Johnston. And so I've made this a 9 infantry brigade army as well. He's got Bushrod Johnston and this fella, no face John Winston. I think we can do better than that. Yeah, he's a political officer, but he kind of needs to be in a fort somewhere. That was auto-assigned by when I recruited the brigade, I think. How about, well, I don't know if Coke's really any better. Well, how do we sort this by leadership? John McCown. McCown? McCone. McCown? I'm going to go with McCown for now. If anyone knows that it's McCone instead, drop a comment. Anyway, I think John McCone has found himself a home in the Army of Tennessee, which I think is historically where he served, so at least the name vaguely rings a bell in that regard. I am not an expert on the West, really. Gotta admit that. That's going to be McCown's brigade. I know Barksdale should be over there in the Army of Northern Virginia. Yeah. I don't really try to keep it all, you know. Well, he didn't serve in the East, so I generally just kind of look for good dudes, but sometimes I do kind of like, it just looks weird if Barksdale is out west. I may switch him over at some point. Kershaw, too, for that matter. I think at the division commanders, I know Cheatham was in the Army of Tennessee, and so was Pat Claiborne. And certainly Polk was, but yeah. The artillery division is fine for Polk. He doesn't need to be anywhere higher. And let's see, what does that leave? Okay, our engineers are the same, just the little horse artillery battalions. So what have I done with Bragg? I haven't recruited any new units. However, there was one comment that I thought was worth trying. I've been talking about all those little Texas brigades and how I thought they weren't really increasing in size very much. And someone had the idea, maybe they'll come up a little bit faster if you put them in Bragg's command. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but it was worth trying. So I have pulled all of those little Texas brigades over to Bragg's command, and not just the brigades, but there were some artillery battalions as well. And maybe they will come up a little faster. Bragg does have pretty good admin. Now, I don't know if admin helps with replacement speed. It seems like if anything does out of all these attributes, admin would be the one. So maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. But anyway, gonna try it. And they're not very big. Lucius Polk, 500 men. Wharton's got almost 600, not quite. Greer, 609. Green, 616. Yeah, you can see how tiny they are. And we'll just see how fast they come up. If we get into like May and they're still below 1,000 men apiece, at that point it's like, well, I'll probably just combine them and just make a couple of brigades. A couple of real size brigades out of these guys. I'm not going to wait for a year. The battalions are a little bit bigger because I've recruited them directly. These aren't campaign start. They've got 8 guns apiece. This guy's got 15 guns. I wonder why such a difference. I wonder how Vance increased. Well, I think it's because I recruited small brigades and then realized I was recruiting and then caught my error. And I think Vance was like, "Oh, wait a minute, make a bigger brigade there, not brigade, battalion." All right, but for now, this is all we've got in Bragg's recruiting command. And it's going to take those a while to increase. And as far as recruiting more troops, I talked before in a prior episode about how, if I just recruit a bunch more men, so is the Union, right? And we're always going to have that relative disadvantage. And therefore, from a cost perspective, I think it makes sense to just kind of establish kind of a level and then just maintain it rather than keep recruiting, because that's going to cost money, and they're still going to do the same thing. They're going to keep recruiting and recruiting. But if we just level off, then they've kind of leveled off a little bit as well. And they'll maintain that 1.5 to 1 kind of ratio. On historic behavior. There are some of the random behaviors, AI personalities, where they won't do that, and they will just recruit and recruit and recruit. And then there's other AI personalities where they won't. They'll just let you out-recruit them. because they're focused on other things. I'm kind of going off on a tangent. So I'm not really that interested in continuing to recruit more men because, A, just recruiting them costs a bunch of money. Arming them costs a bunch of money. And I got to keep an eye on this credit rating and the economy and not get ourselves in a bad situation. Economically, financially. However, that was all kind of a lead up to, I think I'm going to want probably another army or corps in this central theater, the Western theater, but this side, the Kentucky, Tennessee area. Because it's kind of elongated, right? It's not very deep, but it's a lot of ground for Sidney Johnson to cover, east and west, all the way from the Mississippi up through the kind of this Louisville area, and then potentially over further into East Kentucky, right? I think I want 2 corps in here to bounce back and forth and deal with whatever the Union does. So I'm kind of thinking about 1 more corps for the Army of Tennessee, what will eventually be the true Army of Tennessee. I haven't recruited those troops yet. And then over here in Missouri, I'm gonna leave it with Price, just the one, which I've made bigger. I think I really only need to recruit 5 more brigades for that. Because if I have 2 corps here, then I think I'm pretty comfortable going back down to that 7 infantry brigade. So I can recruit 5 more brigades. And then this army can transfer 2 brigades over to the other one. And then we'll leave 9 brigades in the Army of Missouri. And then I'm hoping that these Texas boys, which I've now sent over to Bragg so that hopefully they maybe grow a little faster. That may or may not work. I'm still hoping for them to form a smaller force that to operate in the Trans-Mississippi, sometimes maybe in support directly of Price, but also to kind of run around up here and cause problems for the Union. And I'm also interested in, maybe kind of once we get that basic structure filled out, maybe recruiting a few more cavalry and creating a similar independent cavalry corps that can run around up in here in Illinois and Indiana and Ohio and raid and do scouting and all that sort of shit. But I want to get this second corps established here in Kentucky first. And as far as manpower, I think we have the manpower to do that. We have 147,000 in our volunteer manpower pool and 230,000 drafts available. So we've definitely got the manpower. That's not an issue. It's really more the cost. Right, enough about that. Right at the tail end of the last episode, I cut off recording, but time was still running, and just literally a couple seconds after that, we got our Impressment Act. So that's done now. So I need to choose something else, and I'm kind of dithering back and forth. Part of me wants to go ahead and just finish out Militia Act, but as I just showed, we've got manpower, and I am not, I'm not intending to run up into the 200,000, 300,000 troop range. And frankly, I think 24-month contracts is probably okay. So I don't think I'm doing this. I may change my mind later, but I'm not going to do that. And I know I'm very interested in more ag and more industry. But one thing that I'm pursuing is, I've talked about multiple times now, is kind of this trade and tariff and clear blockade approach to the economic management. And for that, I want more trade deals, which means I want more diplomatic subsidies. And the way to get that is, I'm going to go ahead and take this Diplomacy 1 Act. 30 days. Okay, 29 days. And one commenter brought up a good point that I think I've gone over before, but I don't know if I have recently in this campaign. For folks who are familiar with the game prior to 1.06, and this goes into subsidies too. Okay, let's start here. And these have changed a little bit, right? The subsidies used to be a little different. There was not a military subsidy. And there were a couple of other subsidy sliders that have gone away because of the way that all this has been restructured. And each one of these subsidies actually, on its own, did something, had an effect. For example, there was a recruitment subsidy, and the higher you had it pegged, the more manpower you got recruited. Diplomacy subsidy, on its own, right? If you max it out, it had some level of impact to relations with Europe. Industry subsidy had directly fed into buying, the economy, private companies building more factories and more ironworks, farms for agriculture. You get the idea, right? And this was the way that the player interacted with the economy prior to 1.06. The overall economy didn't get more complicated. It worked the same way it does now prior to 1.06. It's always worked this, at least mainly, right? All of these buildings, most of them, right? Not the new buildings, but all the factories and the farms and the plantations, these were all here doing what they do now. All these goods worked the way that they do now, in demand, in value, in production, right? None of this is new. There was just, what has changed is the way that the player interacts with the economy, because up through 1.05, there just wasn't much to do with it. You could come in here and look at this, but there wasn't really much you could do to influence it. That is what has changed in 1.06. It's the level of player interaction. Okay? And so then that brings us back to, all these subsidies don't have a direct effect, except for politics, because this influences how many policies and acts you can have. Not acts, policies. All these others don't actually do anything in and of themselves. You then take this subsidy money, and you can subsidize individual specific buildings and railroads. Like right here, we have enough subsidies available where we can build or subsidize a brickworks, a foundry, an ironworks, a lumber mill, or a factory, which is actually pretty attractive. As I look at that, we can do an ironworks now. Or the money goes into these projects. Okay, I know a lot of people are very familiar with this. Some may not be, and that's why I'm going over it. And then finally, this says policies, right? But there's actually two different things going on here. The, quote, policies are these on the straight vertical red lines, right? Government funding 1, government funding 2, etc. And that is government funding, agricultural. It's called King Cotton on the Confederate side and Breadbasket on the Union side. But this is ag, this is industry, this is military, and this is diplomacy. Right, so these are the main lines. These are the policies. And these are the ones which are limited in how many you can have up here in the upper left. Like right now, we can have up to 12. And we currently have 6. Up through 1.05, each level of these policies actually had an effect on their own, right? Like government funding 1 got you a little bump in credit rating just by taking this policy. And then you got another little bump at government funding 2 and government funding 3. These don't do that anymore. All they do now is increase the amount of economic subsidy money that you have available. And then it's up to the player to use that economic subsidy money for anyone, there's several different options. And the player might choose to use that subsidy money for improving credit rating, but it doesn't happen automatically. And then it's, a similar story in all these other policies as well. So, like for diplomatic, it used to be that you took diplomacy 1, and that action by itself improved relations with Europe and would also unlock a couple of imported weapons that would just start showing up in your armory. Like, I had Diplo 1 before, Enfield's and Lorenz rifles would just start showing up. You didn't have to do anything else. And then a few more weapons would unlock, and you would improve relations with each level of Diplo. That doesn't happen anymore. All this does is just improve diplomatic subsidies, and then it's up to me do I want to use that money to unlock some weapons? Do I want to use it to improve relations with Europe? Or do I want to use it to improve trade deals? And what I'm choosing to do in this campaign is I'm using it for trade deals. These other things in the policy tab, which on the blue lines, these aren't policies, these are acts. These, like tariff act, these do not count against the policy limit in the upper left. And all these pretty much function as they did before. I'm not aware of any of these acts that are substantially different in their effects than they were prior to 1.06. I think they just do the same thing. And then these militia acts, they're kind of in a little separate category by themselves. They're acts, but they're not, they're a little bit independent of any of the main policy lines. So they're in their own little box here. And so the point that the commenter who brought this out, the point I think he was trying to make, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but when you take one of these policies, right, it doesn't change your slider over in the finance. Okay, like if I have this maxed out at very high for industry, it stays there. And so when I take industry 1, boom, it doubles the amount of industry subsidy, which means that, boom, this number over here comes up. Which puts pressure on the budget and can have an impact on credit rating. And so, when you take these, there's an economic impact to that. And so therefore, when you take them, have an idea, recognize that taking that policy has an impact on your government budget, and have a plan for it, right? Understand, have a plan for how you're going to use that money, because otherwise you just take the policy and then you're hurting your government budget without a plan in place for, what's the cost benefit analysis. And so in this case, I take government funding, and part of that is I wanted access to tariff acts and impressment, and I have to take this policy to have those. And I am putting economic subsidies. Initially, my idea, right now, the idea is market reform to improve the performance of my seaports. And then I might actually, at some point, though, I've kind of got a mind of holding back a little bit on that and having some economic subsidy money available to plug into improved credit rating, which is an enormously expensive project. But that's why I unlocked this. Agriculture subsidies was because I was pressing for that farm mechanization project, and I wanted to get some levels open in that for manpower reasons, and also because it improves crop production, which then kind of feeds into making provisions for the Army. Industry was about upgrading that iron mine, because that's our single source, and building railroads and building factories and foundries and ironworks. Particularly factories seems to be pretty important in developing the economy and in developing private wealth. I think military is pretty obvious, right? This is the subsidy that unlocks weapons, gets you the organization reform of the Army. And then Diplo subsidies because I'm pursuing the trade deals in my economic strategy. Okay, as usual, I meant to just talk a couple of minutes, and I probably just talked, I don't know, half a freaking hour. Anyway, so I hope that was helpful to some viewers. And going with the Diplo. Speaking of econ stuff, how are we doing on our railroad? Which we are currently constructing the Houston and Shreveport, 84% done. And it should be done in 38 days. And that is this line that runs from, well, it says right there, Houston to Shreveport. And it runs up this way, though. It runs up through Huntsville, Palestine. Well, Palestine is how that's pronounced in Texas. To Dallas, and then over, it runs like this. And as soon as that's done, which is going to be pretty soon, I'm going to start working on the other railroad that we have eligible, and that is the Little Rock in Dallas, which I don't know exactly how that runs. I don't know if it's just going to come over to Shreveport and then up, or if it's going to run directly across here. But there's a lot of stuff in Texas, raw materials, a lot of crops, forage, that kind of thing. Not industrial stuff, but stuff that's needed for food, right? This is kind of where a lot of the raw materials for feeding the armies comes from. And so building these railroads over here, I think, is going to help move some of that stuff further east. So I am going to build this railroad as soon as the Houston and Shreveport completes. And I've actually built up enough industrial subsidy that it won't cost that much to build it, right? I mean, I just built the Houston and Shreveport right on day one. So that was actually pretty darn expensive. And if I thought about it, maybe I should have waited for industrial subsidy for that. But now that we've got that iron mine upgraded, so I'm going to hold off on industrial subsidy for this railroad. And then by the time this is built, in about a month and a half, starts building, there should be a fair amount left over. Maybe we'll Maybe I'll plop a factory down somewhere. One other really good use that I know a lot of people do for industrial subsidy, however, is this thing. The vast majority of projects over on this military side are military subsidy, and then there's a lot of Diplo ones too for various European weapons. But there is one industrial subsidy, and that is weapons production. And what this thing does, each level of this project further increases weapons production efficiency. Which means that when we go and make those big weapons orders, they come a little bit faster. So that is another use that I know a lot of people do with industry subsidy. I don't. No, I'm not saying my way's better. I'm just saying, I use it for other stuff. Different ways to play the game. I was just bringing that out if anybody didn't know. Now, there's also this improvised shipyards, which is an agricultural subsidy on the military side. And it says this allows construction of gunboats without the need for dedicated shipyard facilities. And this is not clear at all. And so that's why I'm bringing it out. But I just learned this from a developer post on Steam. This policy does not actually unlock any new ships, right? You still have to take the, whatever the policy, project is, ironclad gunboats, armored gunboats, Confederate, you still have to use these. What this improvised shipyard thing does is it allows the player to construct gunboats without using shipyard capacity. That's all it does. That strikes me as an incredibly expensive project for a pretty darn minor benefit. I mean, y'all seen how I build ships, right? I got a whole bunch of brigs building. I got some ships repairing. It's only 0 right now because time isn't running and I just loaded the game in. It'll populate once time starts rolling. I built all those frigates. I never came close to pushing up against the limit of shipyard capacity I have. So I think this project, I just don't see the benefit of it. But anyway, it does something different, something less from what the description implies here. This allows construction of gunboats. It doesn't unlock gunboats. It allows construction without the need for dedicated shipyard facilities. Well, I don't know. You got to build a lot of ships before you get the idea. Okay. I think as I was going through the changes to the armies, I think we kind of covered their current situation. And so, bam, let's go. 40 minutes into the episode. Good Lord. I do go on and on, don't I? Actually, I think there was an army over here getting fairly close to price. Yeah, we just issued. Okay, now I didn't really buy anything recently. And there we go, BBB minus. Now, this is only 5,000 men. What's he up to? Is he going to get reinforced by an unseen army over here? Because if he's not, that's kind of a dumb attack. Even without his new guys, probably still has more than twice as many men sitting right here as it is. We'll see. He may just come up there, make contact, and then retreat. He might. Or we might have kind of a... Army of the Tennessee is moving north away from Cairo. Interesting. This is all pretty quiet here. I don't think it's going to stay that way for long in Kentucky. One thing I do want to, yeah, he wants to fight. 5,000 men against 11,000. I don't know why he's doing that. We do have we got 2 brigades with a total of, so our 2 smallest brigades are unhappy, I guess. That probably includes an artillery unit. Okay, even if you subtract those guys, we've still got over 10,000 men who don't have a morale problem. I'm semi-tempted to auto-resolve this. But I think that, I don't think we would lose, but I think I might wind up taking more casualties than I really need to. I'm going to go ahead and fight it. But I think I'm just going to, I normally kind of show, here's the map, here's how I'm deploying, here's the, oh, we found the Federals, all that kind of stuff. I think I'm just going to cut back in whenever the shooting starts. All right. So I will be back, and we'll see what happens here in this. It shouldn't take very long to send these guys on their way at another battle here at Springfield. Yeah, so we're on the same map, and we are defensive. We do have the objective. It's down here on this side of Wilson's Creek. However, this is where he's coming from, so he's somewhere in this area. And dude's got 2 brigades. There's no cav. There's no artillery. So I'm not really going to set up a defensive position. I mean, I got engineering points and all that kind of stuff, but I think I'm just going to move up this road and just... until we run into them, and then we're just going to shoot them, and that's going to be it. I could set up here, put up some breastworks, and take even less casualties that way. But, I don't want to give them a chance to, well, I'm going to go this other route toward the objective, and then I go chasing him through. I'm just going to do it this way. Okay, so this was a little embarrassing. Had my dudes over here, and they were going up this road toward, fully expected just a couple of brigades to run into them. Marmaduke was up here looking around for them. Well, they started down here somewhere and just marched right past me and just came on down here and took the objective. So we wound up having to come all the way back and chase them down, and it just got to the end of the day. So here we are in the second day of this merry little battle. And like I said, there's only 2 brigades, so I just got prices. Got Marmaduke back down here close enough where we had a nice deployment zone, and I just got the boys lined up. Obviously, in this terrain, artillery is just not going to be a factor, so I've just got them sitting back here. They're not going to... I'll be shocked if they're able to get any shots. Other than that, everyone's lined up. We're just going to start shooting them. Now, I did have to redeploy them from some distance away in some cases, and I've noticed that if they don't move very far, or if they're in open ground, they're fine. But if you move them some distance, or you put them into like forested terrain, they often start with low cohesion, and that makes sense. I think that just reflects, they had to do some overnight marching, and so they'll need to sit there and recover. A lot of these brigades have iron discipline, so I think they're going to recover pretty fast, especially these. Well, yeah, See, these guys have got the Iron Discipline perk, and these two at least are not affected. And I think Forney's going to improve pretty quickly. As far as the low morale that we saw at the beginning of the battle, that was primarily, I think it was here, Parsons. And yeah, he was low, but the fighting spirit is fine. He had a bunch of buffs, and he's fine now. He's back up to eager. So if you go into these battles and you've got like a wavering unit, just double check that fighting spirit on this tooltip for that unit, and I think a lot of times you'll find, oh, they'll actually recover, and they'll be fine. Unless they immediately go into combat. But all these battles have some amount of maneuvering beforehand, and anyway. So we'll get time rolling, and initially I'm not going to move until I see these cohesion nerfs disappear. Other than that, though, we're just going to march ahead. There's kind of a little rise in here. Get up here on top of this little bit of high ground in the forest, and I think it's pretty simple. I don't think the Cav is really going to have much to do in terms of mounted combat in this terrain. I'm just going to go ahead and dismount him now. There's an errant skirmisher that was left from day one, rejoining Daniel's brigade. Okay, looks like cohesion is recovered. Let's do this. Alexander's already detached. Let's detach Slack. And to make sure that the artillery isn't going to follow this. Okay. Alright, Price. How about just move your guys in. All of them. See how that shapes out. That why is he not having the option to give him an advance order? That's not very far. Do they have to be in bugle call range for it? I don't think so. What if I just go this far? No. If I'm issuing that command from... I hardly ever issue commands from this level, so does he actually need to use the... No, that's just move its signal. Or maybe it's because he doesn't actually have sight of anybody. Therefore, they're just moving without... Maybe you have to have sight of an enemy unit. Well, we can probably fix that. I think we just put a couple of skirms out. Should get sight of them again. Oh, Waitman's apparently got some skirmishers. Yeah, these are Waitman skirmishers over here. No, those are Cabell's skirmishers. Well, Cabell, bring those skirms in. They're not there. No, they moved back here. Alright, that's fine. put some skirmishers out kind of on the flanks. Just because it feels like the right thing to do. Or maybe not. This one's for you, Dick. I'm putting skirms out when I don't need to. Now can you give an advance order? No. Screw it. Go ahead. Go. That's at 5x speed too. Right. Well, we got the objective back, whatever that's worth. I'm going to do something I have never ever done before in this game. Price. Maybe. Attack. Let's just see how that goes. Oh, they're going to do some kind of weird... Why are you doing that? Nope, he's sending a bunch of boys forward now. In some kind of strange... Really? Really? What a mess. Okay. It's working. He's got 3 brigades of fire on this lead guy. I mean, casualties on both sides reduced a little bit by the fact that everybody's in cover. They're in cover, but so are we. So, okay, how is... Boy, Cabell is already... Alright. Well, Cabell, just fall on back. Let somebody else take some casualties. Let somebody else shoot. Oh, there goes Marmaduke. Apparently I can't give brigade orders when I've given that kind of order to Price, so Cabell's going to sit there and get wrecked. Now, will Price continue to pursue them? That guy's not pulling back. 1200 to 760. I mean, at this point, I should have just auto-resolved the battle, right? I was curious. I wanted to see what he would do with that setting. He's got Marmaduke in the fray there with his Springfield Musketoons. Okay, 1st Brigade is not having a good time. He's on his way out. Will he send the cav? Probably not. Okay, well. I just wanted to see what would happen with that stance, and it worked, but am I going to do that again in the future? Probably not. Alright, Cabell, how'd you make it? Oh, he lost 670 men. Which is probably... yeah, that's like over 80% of our casualties. Okay, well, that's what happens when you use these stance orders. Your troops will act pretty much like the AI does. Which, you know, I mean, that was a pretty strong attack, obviously. I mean, we had 7 brigades to 2. And there you have it. 1,700 casualties, 800 casualties, so a little bit better than 2 to 1. Rains got famous there. Nice. May have captured a few weapons there. I don't know. We'll find out here momentarily. Okay. Well, we didn't capture any artillery because there was none there to capture. And 1,100 weapons of some type. Wasn't any of those. Wasn't any of these. That looks about the same. I don't think it was Springfield's or Mississippi's or any of these. Yeah, I guess it was just either Springfield or mixed muskets, I guess. Which, if that was the case, then Cabell went up too close, because all of our guys are rifle armed. If they really were both armed just with muskets... ah. Alright. So that happened. Third Battle of Springfield. And I did think of one other thing that I intended to do earlier on the campaign map, but I didn't. I want to move this Peninsula Army up over here just a little bit so that this supply depot falls back into, you know, McClellan built this fort, built this depot for us. It would be a shame not to use it. So let's bring Magruder over this way. No, not like that. That's going to get you in contact with McClellan. That's not what I'm trying to do here. That's better. Meanwhile, let's see if there's another army coming in on... No. It doesn't appear to be. Yeah, now that time's running, I was talking earlier about shipyard capacity. We have 66,000. We're using less than half of that, and that's with got all these sloops of war getting built. We have 24 ships in repair, so that improvised shipyard project. Yeah, I just don't see it. Okay, Magruder has gotten to his... Yeah, we got another supply depot. That was close enough. And he's drawing supply from it. Fantastic. And he's still well within reinforcement range of the other armies in the area, so... Sweet. Okay, I think that will do for this episode. If you like what we're doing with this channel, if you like the content, then leave a like, leave a comment, maybe even subscribe. If you want to kind of catch up on what's been going on with this campaign before now, if you're new to the series, I'm linking a playlist here. And I am also, and I do this a lot, but I don't normally mention it in commentary, but I'm also linking Worms and Warriors' latest video. He's got a good Grand Tactician series going from the Union side, and he is a little bit further into the campaign than I am. Not that much. He's in 1862, but yeah, we're both finding that here in the 106 live that finances are a thing. And both of us did pretty extensive beta campaigns when 106 was still in beta. And we both ran into that treasury bug where the economy kind of stopped functioning and didn't know it for a long time. And so a lot of the mechanics in 1.06 we fleshed out in our previous beta campaigns, but all together, some of the economic impacts of those actions, you know, they're a lot more apparent now in the live version where that bug doesn't happen. Anyway, so there's a link there to the playlist. There's a link there to Worms and Warriors' latest stuff. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. At any rate, thank you very, very much for watching. I appreciate it.